Hello, everyone. Welcome to the USBP webinar. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to give everyone a few moments to join from the waiting room, and then we'll get started. Okay, I see everyone starting to join. I wanted to introduce myself and your presenter for today's webinar. My name is Elisa and I am with Acelab. I am the Architecture Connections Manager, and we have Wade Arnold here from US Bulletproofing presenting Protecting People and Property. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a quick introduction of US Bulletproofing's brand page on Acelab. The best way to go into this, and I'll include the link in the chat, is to search US Bulletproofing, click on manufacturers, and it'll appear right up here for you. You'll get an overview of all of their products, some inspiration and imagery, and a way to directly connect with Wade and Brian. After this webinar, there will be an option to connect with US Bulletproofing today if you would like to learn more about their products. That will be available to you during a poll about halfway to 45 minutes into the presentation. It is optional. Welcome to fill it out, and that is how we will connect you with them. One last thing to note before we get started today is that this is AIA certified. So if you did not already fill out the information, I will include that form in the chat right now, just to ensure you get credit for today's presentation. But I believe that is everything. So Wade, whenever you are ready to kick it off.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone, depending on where you are across the country or not now. Thank you for joining us today. As she mentioned, my name is Wade Arnold with a specialty fenestration group comprised of two different brands, US Bulletproofing and Quick Serve. Now, some of y'all may know both one or two of the brands or none of them at all. That's quite all right. But I just want everybody to understand that these are two manufacturers that make security fenestration products. And essentially, when you start talking about security fenestration products, you're looking at everything from transaction windows, through wall applications, doors, openings, single punch windows, storefronts, curtain walls that are all security rated for ballistic protection, bomb blast, storm impact, and high forced entry resistance. So start looking and thinking about when or where you may need security, because throughout this presentation, you will hear me say things like, think like a criminal, so you design with security in mind. Now, just looking at this image right here, I'm sure many of y'all may recognize or identify that building. That is the Washington Monument, located right there in the heart of Washington, D.C. But just by looking at all of the glass and metal right there, that small entry security vestibule, could anybody tell me if it is ballistic rated, bomb blast, storm impact, or forced entry rated by any means whatsoever? And the answer is no. There's no label on it. There's no sticker saying this is level 7, this is bomb blast, this is forced entry rated. Good luck getting in. But for that matter, when you start walking in and out of some of these buildings, or anytime you're looking at drive-through windows or transaction windows or storefronts or openings, start looking at some of the glass of the vestibules and think, if I was a criminal, how would I try to enter this actual building here? How would I try to occupy the secure side on those windows, on the other side of those windows and doors? Now, I can tell you that this particular entry vestibule is rated to the highest level of ballistic protection. It will meet, in some cases, certain levels of bomb blast protection. It is forced entry rated as well, and it will meet storm impact, even though the system wasn't necessarily rated for that by any means whatsoever. But you think this is just the entry vestibule to a national monument, because it is within proximity of a lot of other buildings that very well could be targeted for terroristic acts or accidental explosions or ballistic threats or any other type of crazed individuals out there. So like I've said, just start thinking about when or where you may need security, because you can put as many different types of security measures around your buildings. You can put perimeter fencing, you can put security guards, you can put access control, you can put security cameras, you can put concrete bollards, pedestrian landscape barriers. But if you are not truly hardening the exterior physical envelope, or in some cases interior as well, if you are not hardening the envelope of your building, you absolutely run the risk of someone penetrating through to the other side, because 10 times out of 10, I can confidently say that people have always seen glass as the weak point in the wall system. Now, we're not just going to be focusing on glass today per se. We're going to be focusing on the entire fenestration system. But again, just think like a criminal. So you design with security in mind, because right now across the country and really anywhere in the world, when you start turning on the news, what are the first three things always on the news? Well, it's gun violence, it's drunk driving accidents, and it's the winning lottery numbers we didn't win. Quite frankly, it's just depressing to watch anymore. But for that matter, every single year, there are thousands of lives lost to gun violence. Storm impact requirements, storm impact incidents or occurrences create billions of dollars of damages every single year. The constant rioting and looting and civil unrest that is just plaguing our world out there. We never know when or where these situations are truly going to be coming from. All right. But when we start getting down into the actual different types of security threats, the first one that everybody wants to talk about is always ballistic protection. And right now, since your computers, if you want to visit our website or go to your favorite search engine and just type in UL752 and click images, one of these charts is actually going to pop up. Now, for those that are not familiar with UL752, don't worry about that, because I'm about to make you very, very familiar with this actual chart here, because this is essentially the ballistic requirements for about 99% of your construction projects out there. Okay, there are some additional ones that we'll talk about here in a second, but UL752 has been the supreme ballistic rated requirements for a majority of your commercial projects out there. The other 1% we'll talk about in a little while, but I am going to give you a brief overview and some cliff notes of UL752, and then some issues that I have with UL752 that I want to make sure everybody is aware of. All right, but keep in mind, first thing, though, is that all of these weapons that you are seeing here that they have selected to test with, these are all based off historical crime data. That's essentially why you see many different types of weapons out there for just what very well could be utilized in the event of a ballistic attack. All right. But levels 1 through 3 primarily focus on small caliber handguns, right? 9mm, 44 Magnum, 357 handguns. 4 through 10, and we're not going to focus on 9 and 10, so really it should be 4 through 8. Focus on your higher caliber rounds, single shot rifles, semi-automatic weapons to a higher caliber, a higher degree, all right? But here's the first issue that I have with UL 752. One, this is a very, very old standard and a very old testing procedure, all right? They mandate, keep in mind, this is all done within a controlled environment, so they're not even testing per real world application. They mandate that you mark off 15 feet before you discharge any weapon at any surface of any material. This is not just pertaining to glass. And there's a lot of non-ballistic rated products out there, all right? But when you start looking at some of the metallic members, when you start looking at concrete barriers, when you start looking at masonry units, stucco eaves, or even you start looking at glass, some of those are tested sometimes to ballistic rated requirements, all right? But like I said earlier, glass has always been seen as the weak point in the wall system, but that is no longer the case, because there are systems that we're going to discuss in detail a little bit later on about how to protect against all these different types of levels here, all right? Which brings me to one of my next issues, that in this controlled environment, that 15-foot space, if any of your clients ever ask you, is there any testing between 0 to 15 feet? Unfortunately, the answer is no. And the reason they move you back 15 feet is because that allows the projectile to achieve its maximum velocity exiting that barrel before it hits the surface of the material. Okay, so bringing me my final issue with UL 752. If there is one level you should never, ever, ever utilize, please let it be level 6. And this is the reason why. Common sense is going to teach you that level 6 is more protective than 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. You would think it's higher in the chart, it's going to protect you the most. Unfortunately, it's not. And if you look closely enough, level 6 is essentially the same protection as level 1. The main difference between level 6 and level 1 is that level 6 is shot 5 times, level 1 is shot 3 times, all right? The idea behind ballistic protection, if you noticed, I have not said bulletproof because that's just a misnomer. Ballistic protection is that you are buying time. That is essentially what you're doing, because if you're still sitting there after 3 shots or 1 shot or 5 shots, you're a very, very brave individual, or you're a very, very stupid individual, all right? You will also get the question sometimes where people will ask you, what level do you recommend? You never, ever want to answer that question. Instead, answer their question with a question and say, what are you trying to protect against? Because if people are saying, are trying to protect against high caliber rifles, well, you're not going to recommend levels 1, 2, or 3 for that matter. All right. So ask them what they are trying to protect against, or slide that chart over to them and say, what level would you like protection up to? All right. And so when you start looking about when or where different levels may be utilized, it all comes down to two different applications. One, yes, what your security threat is. And then two, from a situational aspect. Is it interior? Is it exterior? Do you need thermal resistance? Do you just need interior clean polished edges? Are there certain types of market segments that use certain levels? Absolutely. Believe it or not, a lot of drive-through windows that y'all go by sometimes or pick up your food or your late night meals or your happy meals or your coffee, sometimes those are ballistic rated transaction windows because there's a lot of cash there. There are a lot of upset and irate people. If you remember a few years ago when Popeyes threw down the gauntlet with Chick-fil-A and one of the greatest marketing schemes ever known to mankind, they said, we have a better chicken sandwich. Chick-fil-A said, hold on, that's not the case. People were breaking into Popeyes through the windows just to grab a chicken sandwich. That's it. All right. You start looking at retail facilities, banks, pharmacies, credit unions, convenience stores. Anytime you've gone into a convenience store and see the cash register or the attendant behind a big bank of security glazing, that's usually levels 1, 2, or in some cases, 3 as well. There are many educational facilities or government facilities or first responder facilities that will use levels 3 and 4 to start getting into some of the higher caliber rounds as well. And then you look at some of our what we call our HVT or your HSD, your high value target areas or your high security designated areas that may need higher levels of ballistic protection. Government, Department of Defense, Department of State, even in some cases, Department of Energy as well. All right. All these different federal entities or areas that they need to protect these types of buildings from forced entry rated systems, or sorry, from occurrences or high threats of high levels of bullets, then they absolutely are going to need that type of protection. But I want you to take a look at this image right here. All right. And if you were to guess what type of building that may be without any label or logo on it or anything like that, what that may be, I've had some people say it's a medical facility, it's a mixed use development, it's a high end residential. I've had people say government. I've even had people say it's a dentist's office. I've also had people say it's in Miami because they can see the palm trees in the background. But I want you to remember that image because I'm going to show it to you a little bit later on. But my point being here on this particular image, though, no one can tell me what level of ballistic protection it is just by looking at it. There's no label on it saying this is level 1, this is level 8. Good luck getting in. You essentially, the only way you can find out, it starts with your specifications and your plan details, or someone walks up and tries to shoot that glass with a high caliber rifle, and we'll find out very quickly as to what level of protection it actually can be. But remember that presentation because I'll give it to you a little bit, or remember that image because I'll be sure to share that with you a little bit later on in the presentation. When you start talking about the other 1% of the ballistic rated standards, the NIJ 0801.01, there are some similarities here to UL 752. This is the other 1% of those projects we were talking about that are typically designated for federal entities. So yes, Department of Defense, Department of Justice, even in some cases, the White House or Congress, they utilize these standards. As you can see, there are similarities to UL 752 with 9mm, 357 handguns, 44 magnums, 7.62 rifles. All of those specimens are shot to level 5, except for armor type 4. Now, when you start getting to armor type 4, that's armor piercing rounds at that point. There's not a system in the world that can truly protect against that because that could very well pierce through the hulls of a tank. All right. So just start thinking about when or where you will need security. Start asking your clients what level of ballistic protection are you trying to protect against? What are your threats? Because that dictates a lot of parameters around the design of your envelopes of your buildings. Now, moving on from ballistic protection onto bomb blast. When people think of bomb blast scenarios, they're always thinking about intentional acts of terrorism. We can all remember the Oklahoma City bombing. We can all remember all these terroristic acts and just seeing IEDs being set off during war, but that's not always the case. We also need to think about being in proximity for accidental explosions as well, because these are truly occurrences that we never know when or where these threats very well may be detonating. Could be a pipe bursting, could be a chemical refinery, fertilizer plant, or just something that a car explosion as well. That wasn't intentional. It was just purely accidental. So you need to start thinking about if you need blast protection, the high risk areas of the proximity and what the charge of that particular explosion can very well be, because there are many different criteria out there for many different standards for many different entities. There are. Veterans Affairs has their own standards. Department of Defense has their own standards. Department of State has their own standards. GSA has their own standards. Military has their own standards. All of these different entities have different types of blast protection. Even refineries have their own blast requirements as well. So make sure that you are consulting with either a blast consultant or a protective envelope consultant. You consult with the manufacturers as well. There will be delegated design to a third party because many blast engineers have to be coming in and being involved to run multiple levels of calculus that is way beyond my math level and skills of any means whatsoever. All right. But they want to ensure that the protective measures of these buildings are taken and implemented into the overall building design. Now, please don't think all the conditions that you're looking at here are levels of blast protection, much like the UL 752. They are not. What these are performance conditions of the overall building, right? Now, many people would think that I want performance condition one. I want zero breakage. I want it the most structurally sound and make sure that nothing bends or breaks. That is a very, very, very bad idea. If anything, we should be looking at 2 or 3A. Now, essentially what this is measuring, it's measuring debris or hazardous material that is blown inwards into the building after the actual blast testing. So yes, we would like for no break. We would like for the impact to be absorbed all throughout the exterior envelope and sent into the frame and down into the actual substructure of the building, because I remind everybody, every single architect, designer, building owner, installer, general contractor out there, your buildings are living, breathing organisms. They move, they shift, they expand, they contract, they settle in their foundation. They certainly, in some cases, crack in half. But it's the same concept as us designing bridges to move. You want to absorb the impact. You want to allow for movement in your building, because anytime you flip on the AC and you kind of feel the windows push outwards or the building crack, well, the pressure inside that room is changing. The same way if you open a door when you walk into a room and you hear the ceiling tiles lift, that's the pressure inside that room changing. The same concept applies, but from an external standpoint. Now, there are two things that are required to be in your specifications when it comes to blast protection. The first being the standoff distance. What that distance is from the initial explosion to the surface of that building. The second thing that's required in your specifications is what we call the peak pressure or the impulse, the maximum amount of pressure that that system is being designed with to absorb that impact. And that really varies and greatly depends on what your threat may be, because it could be a small backpack bomb, it could be an accidental pipe explosion that's half a mile away. It could be a van that's driven up to the side of it. If you remember the Oklahoma City bombing, that crazy individual just managed to drive his van right up underneath the awning or next to that building, walk away because there was no perimeter fencing and there were no blast rated windows and it was in the middle of downtown Oklahoma City. He walked away, detonated that van, and every single piece of glass within a 2-mile radius was either shattered, fractured, or blown inwards into the building. That's how powerful that explosion was. Now, I'm going to show you some slow motion videos here of 2 different angles. This is about 10 pounds of TNT that is detonated right here onto the surface of a curtain wall system. And what you're going to see in this slow motion video is the hemispherical shockwave hitting the exterior surface of that building. All right. Now, as you notice, the entire building didn't move. Just by looking at it, you didn't see the entire building move because you can see the substructure, the steel reinforcement, the concrete walls. What this was measuring is the amount of impact that that glass can not only take on, but if there were any hazardous material that was blown inwards into the building. The second video that you're going to see here is what we call the positive phase of pressure and negative pressure as well, because negative phase of pressure can be just as hazardous from a positive right there, and you're about to see the negative, pull right back. And that's the negative phase of pressure. And the reason that is just as dangerous is because it could very well pull windows and doors right off the building as well. Not only is the shock wave hitting the building, but what also gets carried with a shock wave is what we call secondary hazardous materials. It could be dust, rocks, debris, landscaping, vehicles, manhole covers. How much does a manhole cover weigh? Very, very heavy, and it's in the shape of a pizza. Imagine one of those traveling at a high rate of speed like a frisbee at those windows and doors. These systems must ensure protection around the exterior envelopes of the buildings to make sure that everybody or all the data or all the information are safe on the secure sides of these windows and doors, because in some cases, some of these windows and doors and buildings still need to be operational, functional, and secure as well. So there are many different areas that you can put protection on the building. Obviously, checkpoints, security guards, bollards, elevated surfaces, landscape barriers, water hazards. If anything, it's almost like a golf course. But if you are able to get all the way up to the surface of that building and detonate something, that's why there are all these different protective measures. But if someone was further back by the landscaping there and decided to detonate a vehicle, these windows and doors still must maintain their structural integrity to absorb that impact. Now, many of y'all may recognize this skyline here. And if you don't, that's okay. But if you guess Nashville, Tennessee, you're exactly right. It was probably the Batman building that gave it away. But who remembers what happened there on Christmas Day in 2020? Christmas Day in 2020. Well, if you remember, it was the middle of COVID, but there was a crazy individual in a mobile vehicle that was driving around with a loudspeaker yelling, get away, explosion about to occur. And thank goodness he did this on Christmas Day because this was the aftermath right here. Now, yes, look what it did to that vehicle. I'm sure all the leaves were already missing off the trees, but what do you notice about every single building there? Every single building, every window and door has been blown inwards into the buildings. I'm not saying you have to go build every building out of blast rated material, but I truly emphasize and want everybody to understand that we never know when or where these different scenarios or these different types of threats are going to be coming from. Moving on from bomb blast protection and into storm impact. When people start looking at storm impact, they always think about hurricanes. Well, that's not always the case because there are many different types of storms out there. And yes, tornadic conditions are certainly a huge factor that are spreading across the U.S. right now. It's hurricane season right now down in Houston, Texas, where I'm located along the Gulf coastal regions. We clearly continue to go through some of the tornadoes that touch down all the time. But you also look at windborne debris. You look at the size of hail sometimes down in Texas, the saying everything is bigger in Texas. We do get hail balls down here the size of grapefruits sometimes. Absolutely. But right now, the two main standards for storm impact requirements on fenestration systems outside of some of the coastal regions in Miami-Dade and Florida building code are FEMA 361 and ICC 500. Essentially what those are design standards for safe shelters or safe rooms within storm shelters or just overall storm shelter design, all right? Two different standards, but they meet a lot of the same criteria. So really it comes down to when or where your threats may be, what you're trying to protect against, all right? I truly do believe at some point FEMA very well may supersede Miami-Dade or Florida building code just because FEMA does test to a higher wind speed up to for 250-mile-an-hour impacts, while Miami-Dade and Florida building code may only test up to 155 to 175 because that's category 5 hurricanes at that point versus F5 tornadoes for the FEMA or the tornadic conditions, because these are the two main charts that are utilized for FEMA design requirements based upon if you are building within these zones. I truly do believe that red should extend all the way up the Midwest and all the way down to Houston, Texas, and all the way out through the Southeast as well, because the term tornado alley, that is no longer in existence. If anything, it's more like tornado half the country. Same for the hurricanes as well, because I think that red should extend all the way down to the tip of Texas and all the way up to the coastline of Long Island, all the way up to Connecticut and Rhode Island, because we saw what happened years ago when Hurricane Sandy reached all the way up the eastern seaboard and tore up the Atlantic City Boardwalk, New Jersey, and Long Island as well. So again, we never know when or where these storms are going to be coming from a tornadic condition or windborne debris. But hurricanes, yes, we can see those formulate with satellites in the sky. And thank goodness we have those. But even if you have the early detection devices, your buildings are still exposed to these different types of threats. And you can also get in conjunction with storm impact protection. It's the same material that you would have for ballistic requirements as well. So if anything, you get this multifunctional window that where if you need storm impact requirements based off where your threat zones are, you can also get ballistic requirements for educational facilities, for government facilities, for first responders, police, military, anything of that sort. Readiness centers utilize blast and ballistic in combination with storm impact because these are readiness centers in the event that if America is ever attacked, they will have protective buildings as well. So moving on from storm impact into forced entry. When I explain forced entry here to everybody, please don't think that I'm trying to make it so insulting by any means whatsoever. It's essentially very elementary, but for that matter, what forced entry is, it's by means of forcing your way through to the other side of these windows and doors without bullets, without a bomb, and without any type of storm impact scenarios. when you start looking at the forced entry rated standards, there are multiple different forced entry rated standards out there. All right. But the three things that are common within all of those forced entry rated standards are one, the number of attackers that are utilized, two, the duration or how long they allow individuals to attack these windows, and then three, what types of tools are being utilized. Because in some cases, ASTM F1233 or 588, they might just give one individual 5 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes to try to break through with a small ball peen hammer or a small crowbar, and that's it. Versus Department of State standards, where they give six very large individuals of different heights, different builds, different ethnicities, and they give them axes, crowbars, in some cases, incendiary devices. They shoot it a couple of times as well, and they give them 15 minutes to break through to the other sides of these windows and doors. That's a long time. That's a very long time. And all of these windows and doors must maintain their structural integrity without anything penetrating through to the other side. All right. One thing I also want to point out right now is about window film. Now, I know everybody has utilized window film, and before I talk about security ratings for window film, I want to say this about film. Film absolutely has a place in the world for great products such as decorative, privacy, solar control, animal-friendly application. But when it comes to security protection, window film is not ballistic rated. It will not meet bomb blast requirements, and it will not meet storm impact. It will meet some levels of forced entry. It absolutely will. But window film is essentially like bringing a Band-Aid to open heart surgery. It is completely unnecessary. It is worthless. And I have yet to find anybody that will stand behind a layer of film and let anybody shoot at them. They'll tell you and market it to you, oh, it keeps the glass together. Great. So does the iPhone screen protector on my phone, keeps all the glass together if I drop it. But these are high threat situations, and there are many school districts out there. There are many other types of buildings that utilize window film just because it's a cheap solution. That's it. But kids, they pick at everything. It's a maintenance nightmare. You have to put multiple layers on it to where the distortion of looking out the window almost looks like a funhouse mirror. So be aware that window film, unfortunately, is marketed to you, and it is a marketing scam when there are already systems out there where you get the actual longevity of an actual product that are aluminum made, glass, all the things that you are trying to achieve in your building, the aesthetic appeal as well, already exist. So there's really no point in utilizing window film for that matter, because even if you look at this inner city transit right here, just by looking at it, can anybody tell me if it's even security rated? No, you can't. There's no label on it because even all those security cameras and those alarms outside, any of the access control, people could walk up and probably still try to break through the windows. But I can tell you that this system right here is rated to level 5 ballistic protection. Level 5 ballistic rated protection. It will meet storm impact requirements. It will meet some of the low-level blast protection and also the forced entry requirements as well. This is just a place where people go to check into work to drive public transportation, but they had local gangs that were driving by shooting out the windows for target practice. That's it. But it is a still beautifully designed, aesthetically appealing, custom painted frame. Still allows for clear lines of sight, all the daylighting you want in there as well. You can even see some of the spandrel glass that's been incorporated, but that's essentially what you are able to achieve while incorporating security into your designs as well. So just to kind of give you to everything that we've talked about from a security standpoint, now let's move in to the materials as well. So how does security glazing actually work? Well, it essentially works almost like your ABS, your anti-lock brake system, because what you're doing is essentially delaying the forward motion. And yes, I know in some cases, if we've been speeding or driving in a rainstorm or a snowstorm and you slam on your brakes and you feel that jolting motion, yes, it does feel like you're speeding up or losing control, but what that is doing, it's creating energy dispersion. It's dissipating your forward motion because that projectile is going to hit the first layer, slow down. Second layer, slow down even more. Third layer, come to a complete stop. But when we start talking about security glazing and the products that are needed, there are two different types of security glazing. There's glass products and there's acrylic products, and there are multiple makeups of each. The first being what we call a polycast sheet or a full monolithic sheet of acrylic material. Now, this makes for great inviting interior spaces, clear lines of sight. You can see directly through it. It's no issue whatsoever. You can polish the edges, but it only meets low levels of forced entry and only up to level 1 and 2 of ballistic protection. So when we start looking at adding additional layers of polycarbonate laminates, where you get a 3-ply or a 4-ply, you can get an additional layer of ballistic protection. You're still going to meet the forced entry requirements, but one of the main cons of utilizing polycarbonate or acrylic solutions is that you can't use them on exterior surfaces. People do it all the time, but one of the main reasons we utilize glass on exterior surfaces, building longevity, durability. Glass is more scratch resistant. It has a longer life cycle than utilizing the acrylic, but you can still utilize acrylic for interior. It's phenomenal. It is a great product, but when we start utilizing glass products, you have two different options. You have all glass systems, which will meet the highest level of ballistic protection, forced entry requirements, and in some cases, bomb blast, but we do need to be looking at GCP or a glass-clad polycarbonate when we start looking at the highest levels of ballistic protection, bomb blast, because those inner layers of the actual polyurethane and the polycarbonate layer allow it to flex and move and absorb the overall the blast scenario, the occurrence there. This is also your storm impact requirement glass as well, and then your high levels of Department of State forced entry glazing. So when you start looking at the materials, glass, always utilize in exterior applications. Acrylic and polycarbonate, only use those for interior applications unless you want to use glass for some of the interior storefront as well. You have options. You have the ability to custom create and custom design. You can also incorporate RF shielding or IR defense type glass because sometimes people aren't using bombs or bullets or there's not a storm that's rolling by your building. Sometimes people are listening in. You think about corporate espionage, you think about military facilities or data centers. Absolutely, people are trying to steal data all the time. All right. But moving beyond glass, we start talking about the overall system and the fenestration system. And one of the main reasons we also utilize aluminum for exterior surfaces or storefronts is one, it's lighter weight, but also the longevity and the life cycle you are going to get out of that product versus utilizing steel or wood. Because what happens with steel when it interacts with moisture? Well, it's going to oxidize, it's going to rust, it's going to decompose over time. Same thing potentially happens with wood. It will decompose, it will mold, it will rot. But you can still get from an interior aspect, you can get wood and steel doors and have that inviting interior space and incorporate security from an interior or added multiple layers of security protection throughout your building. You think about interior for courtrooms or courthouses or schools, you can get ballistic rated wood door solutions for office spaces, educational, and government as well. All right. So just know your options are essentially endless out there. But when we start even talking about the framing, because 10 times out of 10, we talked about people are going to think like a criminal. They're going to shoot at the glass and try to get through the glass because they see that as the weak point. If they can't get through there, they might start shooting at the frames next. And how we protect the frames and the metallic members is you do two different things. One, you either utilize a thicker gauge of the actual metal or you insert steel into the actual frames to help add that additional layer as well. So now we've started to create a full system versus just thinking, I can only protect the glass. I need to only protect the glass. You can also incorporate thermal performance and thermal resistance into the actual envelope for these windows and doors as well. Or sorry, just the windows. But yes, you can incorporate thermal breaks. You have your isolators, your gaskets, your struts. All of those can be incorporated into a system such as this because right now you're looking at a level 8 GCP that is insulated, thermally broken, and still offers all of those high levels of ballistic protection throughout the entire system there as well. So you're getting that multifunctional window. You're still getting the envelope performance requirements achieved by this one product just right here. So yes, that multifunctional system, you have endless opportunities out there to help design and create the building envelope and the structure that you're looking at for your building as well. I'm not going to focus too much on the actual hardware requirements of this just because I know everybody loves always talking about hardware. It's certainly an eye opener and catches everybody's attention. But for that matter, I just want everybody to understand that these systems can be customizable. They can. I know every building owner and every janitor wants one set of keys or just one key to every lock and that be it. That's not the case. There are multiple different requirements, multiple different access points, multiple different layers of security, some clearance, some not. It just depends on what those requirements that may actually be. They're hung on continuous hinges. Sometimes these doors can weigh up to 400 to 500 pounds a leaf, but they still meet all the ADA requirements. They still meet all the push, pull, throw force requirements as well, and still incorporate security into your building. So just know that these systems are customizable, even though there are some standard hardware packages, you have the ability to custom create and custom design. Now, for anybody that's a spec writer on the actual presentation, I'm not going to pick on you for that matter, but I do want to point out to everybody that spec writing is a lost art form. It truly is. I know how easy it is to go to a platform and drag and drop a BIM object or a 3D CAD rendering of any sort, drag it and drop it into your project, and it automatically generates your project manual. But that project manual, I hope you know, is not complete. And it's not to insult anybody's intelligence, it's just to essentially know that you still have a lot of work to do when you're designing with security fenestration systems. So please, when it comes to specification writing, if you need help, if you need updates, if you need editing, if you need just simple information or a spec review, please feel free to reach out and contact me, because that is essentially what we are trying to protect against, are loopholes in your specifications that not only keep from change orders happening of any sort, or making sure that you have all the requirements based off energy code, security requirements, but that you have selected the right level of bliss protection, that you have selected the right performance condition based off standoff distance and impulse or peak pressure with blast resistance, to make sure that you are designing with the right criteria in the right zone for storm impact, and that you have selected the right codes for whatever your forced entry rated requirements as well, because there are multiple different sections throughout the CSI divisions that incorporate security requirements. And this is just minimal. This is just minimal. I couldn't fit every single one of them on this slide, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to read them. So just know that these systems exist out there. There are solutions to help you design and help you create and help you basically create an inviting area, whether that's a school, a government building, a restaurant, a retail facility. You have the ability to custom create, custom design, and still incorporate security into your overall building design. And even just looking at some of these images through the rest of the project gallery and case study, yes, just by looking at it, you can't even tell me if it's security rated, because these are two double pairs of doors on the entrance to a police station that are level 5 ballistic rated. And there's nothing sexy about it. It's just flat glass, it's entry vegetables, and it's security rated. But they need to be operational, functional, and secure. That's essentially all they're trying to achieve right here. But you still allow daylighting in. People can still see the threats on the outside of the building. People are still saying, oh, I can go see inside that building. I want to go take a look in there. At least I know there are people in there. I can see the lights on. Even when you start moving into educational facilities, because just by looking at this entry vegetable right here, you've done two different things. One, you have created a safe environment or a safe space on the secure side of that window for the administrator there, and bless her heart, she didn't want her picture taken, but you've also created a psychological deterrent. Anybody that's going to walk in there, whether it's with a weapon or in some cases, a crazy parent, because yes, if you get a little unruly at a PTA meeting, they're going to label you as a domestic terrorist. You have to ensure that the safety of those students, the staff, and the administrator, even the janitorial staff on the secure side of those windows and doors, everybody is protected. These solutions do exist out there because there have been multiple school shootings over the years. And I'm not going to advertise, I will never morally just advertise off any of them. But for that matter, these solutions exist out there. They do. People are using window film, or people are just cutting budgets and saying, no, we don't, we're just going to roll the dice and it's never going to happen to our school, until it actually does. Until it actually does. So just know that these systems are available for any type of school design out there, even through all applications as well, from an interior exterior standpoint. When you start looking at pharmacies, and I love showing this pharmacy right here because this is my local CVS, and it got broken into one night. And these were the security doors they decided to put on the exterior storefront because they couldn't get security doors in time. So they just ran to the Walmart they share a parking lot with, and went in there and got some doors to fit in there for the time being. But you look at the ongoing opioid crisis that is constantly plaguing this country, and people breaking in some cases, to veterinarian offices because there are pharmaceutical drugs that are kept at vet offices. People will break into those and to steal horse tranquilizers in some cases sometimes, all right? You even look at stadiums or ticketing areas or check-in areas of any sort. Sometimes fans go back to celebrate at the stadium, or they're right up next to an accessible road for people to just jump out and attack the stadium or try to break in of any sorts. We never know when or where these different types of threats are truly going to be coming from. But utilizing the right systems, the right products, the right manufacturers, you can incorporate everything that you are looking at here, whether it's exterior or interior, for any type of building. everything from drive-through windows to Department of State around the world. You even look at some of the guard booths here. Now, I'm not saying Facebook and Google are going to go at each other for world domination tomorrow, but this guard booth right here is the first line of defense. And sometimes with these tech companies, when they're doing their massive layoffs of hundreds or up to thousands of people, yeah, there are a lot of angry, disgruntled individuals that are going to show back up to work, either with a weapon, just trying to inflict terror, damage, or in some cases, harm individuals as well. So even from a perimeter standpoint, you can incorporate that to guard booths, exterior envelopes of the building, interior applications as well. Every single window and door that you're looking at right here, just on this police department just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, that's a police training headquarters. That's a headquarters. You would think that's probably going to be a targeted building, but every single window and door on that building is rated to one of the highest levels of ballistic protection in case someone walks up to those windows and doors and just thinks, I'm going to walk in here and start targeting some of the local first responders as well. You look at all the anti-Semitism that is plaguing the world right now and everything that is ongoing just from a geopolitical standpoint as well. There are many different religious facilities right now that are hardening their vegetables, their exterior windows, and also what's typically attached with religious facilities, daycares or educational facilities as well. So yes, many of these facilities, many of these buildings can be targeted, whether it is religious practices, whether it is gambling or sports or finance, whether it is news stations, whether it is law enforcement. These buildings could very well be targeted and seem like they are protected because everybody think no one would ever walk up and try to shoot up a police station or go into a sports book or try to break into a news station. Watch the news, check crime statistics every single day, and look at what happens around our country because even police departments or these EOC centers, in the event that there's a natural disaster or there's a catastrophic event where the National Guard has to respond or help, or readiness centers, these facilities still need to be operational, functional, and secure to ensure public safety, to ensure that law enforcement are making sure they're getting their commands of where help may be needed. That is local, that is state, that is municipal, that is all the way up to the federal level as well. It just depends on when or where these different types of threats very well may be coming from. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the presentation. I'm going to keep scrolling through some of the rest of these slides, but I would love to open it up to any questions that anybody may have at this time.
Hello, Wade. I am going to launch the poll as well, and then I'll look through the questions while you're scrolling through these images. We do have our first question here, if you would like to answer this whenever you feel ready.
Sure.
Can you hear me okay?
You hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Could you speak more about the fire-rated security assemblies? What tests are required for the doors, windows, window frames, and hardware?
When it comes to fire rating protection, unfortunately, our systems are not fire rated. And I know a lot of people would think, oh, well, they're such high security that they would be fire rated. Not yet. Not yet. Give us a few years, and more than likely that'll be the case. But one of the main differences, or two of the main differences between our systems and fire rated systems are essentially that fire rated material incorporates a slurry or a mixture that will be inserted into the frames, and that goes down and allow for some of the fire resistance because at some point in high temperature situations, the metal will melt away. Now, it also has to do with the gasketing systems as well that go around the doors. That offers the additional smoke and fire spread protection as well, but our systems do not meet that. When it comes to fire protection, though, there are many different standards out there. I think one of the most common ones is E119, but they test to multiple different temperatures, to multiple different ranges of duration of testing requirements as well. But I'd recommend if you need fire resistance, I would incorporate and look at either Safety First and TGP. Those are two of the best manufacturers out there when it comes to fire resistance that also incorporate some very low levels of ballistic protection. But essentially, they do not offer bomb blast protection, high levels of forced entry. They do not meet storm impact requirements, and they barely meet any of the ballistic requirements as well. They're just essentially two different security life safety standards that are all tested to different security requirements as well. But fantastic question, though.
Thank you so much for that. I have another question here from Todd, whenever you're ready to answer, saying, is it a viable strategy to limit the bullet resistant glazing material to a certain height If explosions aren't a concern, or lean towards a more safe than sorry.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Schools actually do this quite frequently. And every now and then, some public safety facilities or office spaces to where they may only go up to 20 to 25 feet with ballistic material, and everything above that in the curtain wall system is essentially just a standard IGU or non-rated whatsoever. Because if anybody's trying to break into that facility, yeah, the smart criminals check to see if the doors are unlocked first. But if anybody's walking up to that building with a ladder and putting it up next to the glass and they don't have a hard hat on or a construction vest, that's a pretty nefarious character at that point. You're locking the building down. You've notified the law enforcement, but yes, you can run it up to a certain height. That way, if they are shooting at the windows and going upwards, those projectiles are going up into the ceilings on the floor above versus what them actually going straight dead on shots into the actual building. But that is a fantastic question. And hey, if anything, just look at it this way: you're thinking like a criminal. Now you're designing with security in mind. Great question.
And we've got another one if we have enough time here.
Sure.
Okay. Why do the graphics show the entire cartridge penetrating the glazing?
Sorry, say it again. Why does the graphics show the entire cartridge?
Uh-huh, penetrating the glazing.
Because these are essentially ballistic rated or bullet resistant systems. If you decide to go Bruce Willis from Die Hard and empty the clip of 15 rounds into let's say a 9 millimeter into a level one, 15 rounds into the same spot, eventually one very well may pass through. Keep in mind, these are only tested to minimum standards because the idea there is you're not sitting there after three shots. You're not sitting there even after one shot for that matter whatsoever. So yes, given enough time, and I'll tell y'all personally, I have shot a level one sample with a 30-06, which is a high powered rifle from 200 yards away, and one shot passed right through there. But it's only rated to stop 9 millimeters up to 15 feet away. But I've shot it with a 9 millimeter 20 times and nothing has passed through there. So it all depends on what you're targeting it with, what those threat levels are. So yes, eventually that's why you see in some cases some of the projectiles actually passing through to the other side, because given enough time or enough projectiles, one very well may pass through there eventually. But great question though.
And we have our last question to wrap us up, our estimated lead times.
That varies depending on which product you may be looking for, because for quick serve, you'll have standardized product that are kept in stock that could very well be 3 to 5 days, or in some cases 2 days that could ship. And then you do custom products that are anywhere between 8 to 10 weeks. Now, if you do US bulletproofing, right now, doors with standard finishes and framing systems are running anywhere between 10 to 12 weeks. If you do specialty finishes like paints or wood grain finishes or cladded metal, you could very well be looking at anywhere between 14 to 16 weeks, just because those are longer lead time items. And right now, the challenge isn't the metal. The challenge is a lot of the glass, because there are essentially every fabricator of security glazing right now is stretched to the max. There are high levels of requirement of their products all across the country, and in some cases all across the world as well, where they're shipping to embassies, even like the one here for us in Beirut, Lebanon. But it essentially comes down to interlayers and glass and what their capacity levels are. But that's essentially the lead times right now for those products. But that is a fantastic question. I never get that one, so thank you for asking that one.
We actually had one more question come in.
Yeah,
Nope,
go
two
for it.
more. Sorry.
We got plenty of time. Go for it. Ask away.
Okay, Randy asked, when budgeting the project, is there a rule of thumb for level of protection per threat assessment, sorry, and can you offer any range per square foot?
I would say the three biggest words I could say there is basically, or four words, I guess I should say: send me your plans. Send me your plans, because that's a tough one to answer. I get that question quite frequently. They say, what's the cost per square foot? What's it range? That varies, depends on what your security requirements are. But send us your plans, send us your details. I'd be happy to have some of our team price this out from a budget perspective for everybody, so you can at least dial in and give your clients a more accurate answer. I've had people say everywhere down to $50 to $75 a square foot for some of the lowest levels, all the way up in some cases to $200 and $250 a square foot if you go the highest levels of blast protection, Department of State. It just varies and depends on what your threats are and what level of security you're going to need to you're required to utilize for your project. But main point is reach out to me, reach out to anyone on our team. We'll be happy to assist you. We've got local representatives all across the country as well. So if you have a specific project, you need some budgeting done for it, let us know. We'll be happy to help you guys.
Awesome. And with that post-webinar survey, there's an option to click yes if you are interested in an educational workshop with Wade where you can discuss those project specifics. The last question here, I think, is going to have the same answer, but could you give me a bit more information about costs for the different level types?
That's essentially the same question right there. Because when you start looking at the different levels, again, the higher you go in the levels, except level 6, the more cost that's going to be associated with it as well. But I know a lot of people get a lot of sticker shock or start thinking it's going to be a high price when they start talking about security rated fenestration systems. They're not. They are really not. And when you start looking at the life cycle that you are going to get and the added value and the benefit of your overall building design, you will see the value in paying the price for a full security system versus just utilizing window film. All right. So with that being said, yeah, anything price related, just feel free to reach out to me and let me know. I'll be happy to help you.
I think that's everything. So thank you so, so much for all the valuable information, Wade.
Absolutely. Thank you for hosting today. And look, I will also say this for everybody that attended today. I know we're all going to go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow and go, wait, what did we talk about? Please feel free to use my contact information down there. Save it. There's no proprietary material on this presentation. If you would like a copy of it, you're more than welcome to it as well. But feel free to reach out to me.
All right. I hope everyone has a great day and thank you for attending. Bye, everyone.